given, and it's also
It's never been
putting the squeeze. They make money on
excessive materialism and militarism. We know full well that racism is still that hound of hell.
This year in particular, I've been doing like a lot of and we talked about it a little bit when we met up, but I've been doing a lot of trying to delve into kind of like purpose and versus passion, and where do they connect, or where do they meet, and where are they different? And also, I would love to say that I've been thinking about this for like over a year, but I really feel like it's only been this year that I've really thought about how socialization as a child can remove people from what their purpose is, and how I really feel like if we were to strip away all of the ways that we were socialized by our parents, by our family in general, right? Then friends and society. And you think about because people would say, oh, I always wanted to be a stellar athlete, say, right? But it's like, did you, or were you like always like trying to bake when your parents would let you not, practice sports? Like, what did you really, really care about?
Yeah.
Versus what you were taught to care about.
Yeah.
And I think that what's so interesting is seeing people not for necessarily all that they've accomplished, but seeing how their childhood directly ties into what they've accomplished, and how much of their childhood did the things that made them happy, the things that upset them, how much of that did they carry? And usually I feel like it's always all of it, that made them become this person that we now see as this hero.
Yeah. In this podcast, we talk a lot about, mostly me, we talk a lot about childhood trauma and growing up as a person of color in a mostly white space, and how that's very traumatic, which we talked about also over lunch.
Yeah. And it's interesting to me because I don't think that, and we talked about this too, like it's going to take, I feel like by the time I'm 40, I'll have been in a place where I really have really start to undo these knots of all the things that I've just that are very tangled. Because there's I can say in my mind like, oh no, I'm free from all that. But then there was this trigger, and this trigger really has to do with something that was said to me when I was a child, and all of the different ways that impacts us now is really interesting.
Oh my gosh. I knew when I met you, well, maybe I should introduce you first. And then I'll get to that. So, welcome to Now in Color, the podcast that brings those who have been erased in history back to the forefront, giving them the voice and place that they deserve. I'm your host, Sandy Chang, and I'm joined today by Mourhia Wright. I have this long intro about her because she's amazing. Mourhia is an actor, director, producer, writer, and artist from San Jose, California. She received her MFA from the Actor Studio Drama School while also studying playwriting and screenwriting. In 2016, she started her own production company, Wright Productions. Currently, she's the assistant director and producer of a short film, Spot, a true period piece, and a director and producer of a new digital series, B-Side, and the creator, executive producer, and actress of her digital series, Love My Roomie, where she has been named Best Actress at the Glow Festival and Best Director at the Newark International Film Festival. I'm so excited to have her here
really
today.
It sounds so grand.
You're amazing. Welcome, Mourhia. Congratulations on all your awards.
Thank you. Thank you.
But I was going to say, when I first met you on set of Spot, I was just like, I just have this feeling, like a connection, and not to sound crazy.
No, it doesn't sound crazy.
That, totally. And whatever you said earlier about childhood traumas and things that trigger you and what makes you become the person that you are, it all resonates with me.
Yeah, it's so amazing. And I was, to be honest, I was just super in the zone on Spot, as I am on any set. And because we were shooting an entire short film over the course of 3 days, I was extremely in the zone. And so when you Facebooked me, right?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, you Facebook messaged me. And here's the thing too, I rarely get on Facebook anymore, which is crazy. I still abide and live and abide by Facebook. I hardly get on. So when I see a message from there, it's always super meant to be. So I saw yours and I was like, whoa, this is crazy, because I don't even get on Facebook like that. And I was honored. I was like, you want to talk to me? I was like, is she sure? Is she confused? I was like, Did she mean me? I was like, okay, cool.
Yeah, it was because you were so focused and you were working so hard. And I was just like, I had just graduated school and I told you all of my drama and drama pun with school. And I was just like, I just feel like this energy. And I was just like, this is someone I really want to know. And like someone who really inspires me. You really inspired me when you were just like so focused. And obviously the world also feels the same about you.
Thank you.
So thank you for coming.
Of course. Yeah, so should I get into who I've brought in?
Yeah,
Okay.
let's jump right into it.
Yeah, so in the wake of the horrible, I think that, and I didn't, to be honest, to preface this, I haven't delved too much into all of the think pieces surrounding what's happened with Serena, because I didn't want to. First of all, I was at Newark International Film Festival, and I knew that I had to like function at the festival, and I knew that I would be so sensitive that maybe it would like unearth, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like me, and but what I have seen and what I do know, and I was watching the competition, or I was watching the game, and I felt really, I could see already as she was like talking to the ref and everything, I could already see that it was going to be a thing where they were going to possibly try to pin two women of color against each other.
Yes, which they did.
Yeah, which they did. I knew that they were going to tap heavily into, one having like, oh, this is my hero versus Serena not being a hero. I knew that they were going to do all this stuff to try to mar her. And I couldn't help, call me a conspiracy theorist, but I couldn't help but be like, who's planned this? Who's betted on this? Why? Because I just felt like they were trying to undo her as I was watching it. Yeah. I just felt like, why are they trying to undo her? What are they trying to prove? And then my mind started racing, which like as I continue to my career, I'm gonna have to keep that in check. But my mind started racing. I was like, are they trying to say something like, oh, you can't have a child and keep your game? Like, what narratives are people going to wrap around this experience? Because it's not just, oh, she's a poor sport, oh, she's being an angry Black woman, but what are they trying to say about women who are on top of their game, literally and figuratively with her, but then also choose to pursue motherhood? What are they going to try to say about what a woman can be?
Yeah, and on top of that, they also his name escapes me, but it's fine. He's like this cartoonist from Australia.
Oh my God, yep.
He also basically made Naomi Osaka, I believe that was her name, into a white woman in that cartoon. And it's just like, so what are you trying to say in that regard of like, oh, so it's like this angry Black woman like coming after the white women, even though Naomi is not even close to white.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. There's something someone else sent me that I didn't look at yet. Naomi, her mother is Haitian, yes?
I thought it was her father.
Let's look this up.
We did not. Yeah, let's look it up. We have technology at our fingertips.
Oh, yes, her father is Haitian, and her mom is Japanese American. Yeah. So I thought that this was really interesting, that even there's just very, very, we use the terms binary, non-binary, and when we talk about even being mixed race or being African-American, Black, whatever, there is this, it's so binary.
Yeah.
And it's so binary, and it's like the idea of Serena, and people default, and even that comic, which was just, it wasn't even reminiscent. It was the same as like a mammy type. Like they gave her these oversized lips that were pink. It was just it was horrible. So racist, not a mistake. And the artist was proud.
Yes, he was so proud. I saw his Twitter, I think, and he was just like, look, this got bought by the New York Times, New Yorker?
Yeah, the New Yorker, I believe.
One of those.
Yeah, and it was just, I saw that and I was like, oh my gosh. And I need to delve further. I do think that there's something, though something was sent to me, and sometimes, the titles of the news are very like different than what you hear, but the headline was something to the effect of the news denying Naomi's Haitian heritage, like, which how do you even do? And trying to default and like pick and choose, and it being like, first time African-American Black women, blah, 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 and just any way that it could be spun.
Yeah, exactly.
To divide. It just makes me sick. It makes me sick, and it also makes me think of the importance of what women's rights really is. And I guess that brings me to Dr. Dorothy Height.
Yes, let's get into it.
Yes, Dr. Dorothy Height. So she is President Obama, and I want to use the direct quote as I have researched, and I will preface this by saying that if I am incorrect on any of this, I am always open for correction, and I'm continuing to research. And I've bought her book, so I'm excited. Should be here by Saturday.
Yes, we're lifelong learners.
Yes,
on this
exactly,
podcast. We're not experts.
Exactly. But President Obama called her the godmother of the civil rights movement and a hero to so many Americans. And she is the first, as far as like her lifetime, to have really married what civil rights is to what women's rights is, because you remember these things were going on at the same time, but women's rights was very much so geared towards white women, and civil rights was for Black people. But then what happens when you're in between? You know what I'm saying? When you're like a person of color and a woman, like where do you fit when the agenda for women's rights was at that time pretty much like whatever's going to get white women ahead is what we're going to say is right, you know? Mm-hmm. So she was born on March 24th, 1912 in Richmond, Virginia. And she moved to Rankin, Pennsylvania. And I feel like sometimes being from the Bay Area, we say East Coast names of... Don't you feel like it?
I do. I say East Coast names weirdly all the time.
Yeah, like it's not how you say it.
Yeah, and I'm like, oh, I don't know how to say it.
Like the stop Kingston Throop, I think is said Kingston Troop. I've been corrected that it's Kingston Troop. But I was like, but it says Throop. And then like, it's Troop. And I'm like, okay.
Yes.
Well, Hoyt Skimmerhorn. I was saying before Hoyt Shimmerhorn, which is like not right.
Oh,
it's Skimmerhorn.
At
least that's what everybody over the loudspeaker, the conductors say. They always say, this is Hoyt Skimmerhorn.
Yeah. Also, another thing I've noticed is East Coasters love naming random liberal arts colleges in the East Coast and expect me to know. And I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And then they're just like, oh, like you're just some like hoity-toity California.
Gosh,
and I'm like, no, I just literally don't know.
Well, this is, okay, well, really quickly, though, this is something that I've observed is that, hey, school system, you're only teaching us the geography of where we're at.
Yes,
that's where you focus.
True. Yeah.
No wonder why I came here for grad school, and I don't know half the things they're talking about. It's not because I wasn't paying attention in school. It's because they probably were like, I recall more recently, because I went to Santa Clara University, so it was Jesuit. So everything that was really history that I learned was of like religions, and I love learning that stuff. But I remember in high school, okay, going through that history book because we've been behind, and because you don't have a whole semester for that freaking 500-page huge textbook. Yeah, and they would skip chapters.
Yeah. Yes, that happened to me in high school too. Yes. And this is like part of why I started the podcast, because I didn't even learn about Japanese internment camps until high school, until like senior year of high school.
Oh my gosh.
Where I was just like, oh my God, this happened to people that look kind of like me.
Yeah, very, very recently too. Like extremely recently.
Yeah.
At that time. I mean, still at this time.
Yeah. Super
recently. Wow. I think that I learned about Japanese internment camps, I feel like it was junior high, but really what's the difference? But I feel like it was junior high. I learned, everything you learn in elementary school, or at least that I learned, was very much so. And the gold rush and the settlers and the colonial days, and all these things are very beautiful, and women are beautiful. And I don't even know that I ever registered that the women didn't look like me. I just knew that I didn't look like them, so there was something wrong with me.
Yeah.
Never was I like, there's something wrong with this history.
No, I completely understand that.
Because we were just a bunch of slaves.
Like, growing up in California, did you ever do those mission projects?
Yeah, so I did, yes. I feel like I'm one of the few people I know that somehow did not do a mission project. I'm not sure how that happened, but we did Gold Rush, and we did colonial days, And we focus on Gold Rush in 4th grade, Colonial Days in 5th grade. And the Mission Project somehow, I remember my brother doing it. I even remember my sister doing it. I guess I did and I don't remember.
Yeah.
I don't know why I wouldn't, but I don't remember the Mission Project, but I know it very well.
Yeah. It's like a California staple.
It is a staple.
It's a staple. Projects and like
staple.
visit the missions.
Maybe I remember visiting them. I don't remember the project.
I don't remember the project
I remember
either.
playing with clay.
Yeah, maybe you did do the mission project.
Yeah, I did. I just remember the clay. I think I was just, obviously probably only looking forward to the artistic part of it.
Yeah.
Like, we get a field trip? I think I don't know. Yeah. But yeah, so Dorothy,
Yes, back to Dorothy.
Yes, back to Dorothy. So, hey, she passed away at 98 years old. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, April 20th, 2010.
Oh my God, that's very, very recent.
Yes.
And I've never heard of her.
I know. It's very crazy that we not heard of her as we should have. Like she did get a stamp, or her face was put on a stamp. And I still feel like I just haven't, I don't know. There's just, maybe it's with all the like celebrity news they like throw down, they shove down our throat, that like somehow we're just not, because there's like, I was looking and there's speeches with President Obama and there's things that were happening with her there, and even her, when she passed and at her eulogy, like there's things that she was there, but somehow I think we're distracted with the pop culture. So now I'm just,
yes,
I think I'm only
distracted.
Gonna watch BBC News or something. I don't know. I feel like we're
also
missing
on
things.
top of that, like we hear so much about Susan B. Anthony, and she was a fucking hater.
Yeah, she was a hater.
She was like the worst. Actually,
I remember the Women's March last year when women of color were like Susan B. Anthony, and I was like, y'all, no. Like it is. Maybe you would choose the road of cognitive dissonance, but absolutely she has nothing to do with like what has pushed you forward.
Yeah.
People like Dorothy Height, however, do.
Yes.
Susan, nah. No. Dorothy, yeah. You know what I'm saying? So like, it's just the truth. And I understand that hurts because you probably like always thought of Susan as this hero, but the fact is that she wasn't here for you.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
No, she wasn't. And like, I hated that people put in, especially Clinton supporters, put like their I voted stickers on her grave. And I was just like, dude, she sucked. She really, really sucked.
Well,
I'm
it's
sorry.
women, just all women. No, she didn't care.
Yeah.
She didn't care her entire life. Now, listen, Susan B. Anthony supporters, if you have something in which at the end of her life she apologized, please let us know.
Yeah, well, let us know.
But for as far as I know, she was committed to not caring about the well-being of myself or you.
Yeah,
you know what I'm
not
saying?
at all.
Us. And people like Dr. Dorothy Height did care.
Yes.
Did care.
We love Dorothy.
Yes. So one of the things that stuck out to me, we were talking about childhood traumas, right? Her dream school was so she was one of the few African-American women who actually she's actually throughout her whole life, she was in integrated schools, or the majority of her childhood. And then her dream school was Barnard College, which by the way used to call Bernard, different story. It's a California name, but Barnard College. And she was accepted. And in 1929, when she thought she was going to school, college, she was turned away and told that the school already met its people of color quota, which was 2 people.
No.
2.
Oh my God, Barnard.
Yeah, 2.
You guys are fucking up.
I believe it was 75 years later. I get down there to the bottom. They eventually gave her,
Ugh.
Yeah, but 2. 2.
Ugh. Gross.
So the story goes that she did not go home. She had her acceptance letter from them and then went to NYU with it.
Oh, okay.
And NYU was like, sure, come.
Yes.
And that's where she went. And also, per my research, she graduated with her bachelor's and master's in 4 years.
Oh my God. She's
Yes.
amazing.
Yes.
I could barely even do my bachelor's in 4 years.
Right. I thought that was just so amazing. And she does reference that it was something that she had many moments. One time, I believe she was 12 years old and she was turned away from like a pool and she spoke up against it. So I speak to childhood and these situations she went through in her teens. there was something in her that knew, yes, I'm woman, yes, I'm Black, and I have to do something about this. And she committed and her life to this. And it said that her experience at Barnard really illuminated to her, I have to commit to making this better.
Yes.
2 people were the quota.
That's
2.
incredible to me. It's
2.
it's
and the fact
up.
that she got accepted.
Yeah.
And to go in there and that level of rejection.
Yeah.
That level of rejection. I don't know. Like, I guess for like actors, that would be us like going to set. And someone being like, I'm so sorry. We already casted your role. We double casted.
Oh, yeah. I can't even imagine.
And yet this is college though. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And to be a woman of color going to college in 1929, college.
Yeah.
Already the historic capacity of that. And for this school, she could have given up. There's so many different ways her life could have gone.
Yeah.
She could have been like, well, I guess I'll settle down and get married. And nope, she went to NYU and was like, hey, somebody's taking, I'm going to school.
Yes.
You know?
Oh my God. I love her.
Yeah, it's amazing. So upon graduating from NYU, she started working on civil rights issues, and she eventually moved her way to like the president of the United Christian Youth Movement of America, and she also changed the nature of what the YWCA was, so the Young Women's Christian Association, what their the nature of them was, because they were not focused on the rights of women of color. And now when you go to their website, at first I was like, is this the YWCA that I you know, this YMCA? I'm like, oh, YWCA? Like, is this what I thought it is? And
is it not?
It is.
Oh, it is. Okay.
It is,
like, oh,
because
shit.
I was just so surprised, because I don't know the last time I've been on the YMCA's website, but when you go, she did some work, because when you go to the YWCA's website, I mean, it's their tagline: eliminating racism, empowering women.
Wow.
Yeah. But it was her work that even got them to begin to change their narrative.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And you think about the millions of women that they have served.
Yeah.
Her work. I mean, it's amazing to me. It's really, really amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then by 1965, so this is now less than 20 years after entering. 20 years. She's 1929, so this is about 40 years almost after. Yes. She became the director of the newly created Center for Racial Justice at the YWCA. And then she at the 1970 organizations, their convention in 1970, she worked to establish a core imperative for them, and that was the elimination of racism, which is what we see now.
Wow.
So she was working in 1970 to see what is now like eliminating racism, that was her work.
Yeah, this one woman who's rejected from Barnard went to NYU and was like, fuck that. I am going to make a change.
And by 1994, she was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom by President Clinton.
Wow.
And then in 2004, she was honored with the Congressional Gold Medal. The 2 highest civilian honors she received. Again.
Yeah. But how did we not know about her?
First of all, I was going to say all of our girls, everyone should be learning about her. It's crazy.
Yeah, fuck Susan B. Anthony. Put Dorothy Haight, right? Dorothy Haight on everything.
Yes, exactly. And she also established something called Wednesdays in Mississippi, which she would get white and Black women from, I think like they would fly women from the north down south, and they would gather in Mississippi, and they would meet and talk about women's rights. So she was bringing these 2 groups together in Mississippi.
Yeah. Where I'm like still kind of like afraid to go to.
I've passed through Mississippi, to my knowledge. I have family that's in the South, but it's one of those things where, and it's different, because there's this narrative, I'm Black, and it's like, it's very different. There's places where I'm like, oh, it's fine. And my friend Danny, he's a shout out in here. He's Vietnamese American. He's like, but I'm Asian. I'm like, oh my God, there's something else I haven't thought about. Like what areas is it just very Black and white? And then maybe they're like, okay, whatever. But then they're like,
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, we don't ever see any of you except on TV or like not at all.
Not at all. Yeah, like even when I go to upstate New York, it's still like, what? Who is that?
Yeah.
And I get really scared.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a different type of fear. It's a fear, and it's a different type of fear versus like being like, they don't want me because I'm Black versus they don't even know what they want to do with me. That's also very horrifying.
Yeah.
They don't know how to place me. Like those are they're different, but then very valid because in my opinion, they're the same. And it's a fear that exists. But for me in the South, what I have grown to understand in places I have been, is that it's been very much an experience of, how people feel about you. And sometimes somebody might be like, oh my gosh, she sounds like a Californian. But I can say that I have a lot of times preferred that sometimes because growing up in liberal California and then being completely surprised when in undergrad we were turned away from parties and they thought that we went to the state school. Not to say that people did that weren't good, but there was status associated with that, the private university versus the state school. That's why they thought all the Black and brown people went to the state school. And being like, oh no, sorry, only Santa Clara party. And when there were athletes that dressed in brown face and were carrying like janitorial items, sprays, brooms, whatever, and they called it the the over the border, across the border party. It actually ended up on CNN, and I was part of the Multicultural Center, and we protested, and we were sitting with the board of the school, and then there was a professor that worked at the school who was a priest, because there was this. I mean, this is back, now it would have been Facebook, but it was a school's, their blog, right? Mm-hmm. On the school's website. And he spoke about it. He was just like, like all these like N-words here at this school, blah, blah, blah.
He said
Yep, he was a professor, a priest that was actively at that school. Could have been my professor, could have been anybody's professor. Because he talked about how he was a professor and he was just tired of it. He was, whatever. Yeah. But it was anonymous enough that we didn't know who it was.
Wow. What the fuck?
Yeah, so it was a very violent and volatile experience psychologically. One might say, oh, it was fine. It was like, yeah, psychologically it was not.
Yeah, I hate that conversation. I really hate that conversation of like, oh, we're taking politically correctness too far. It's just like, no, we're just saying you can't say that. And just don't say it.
Yeah, we're saying like, also like, wow, this has always been super uncomfortable for me. And I've been so brainwashed to think that there's something wrong with me that I've allowed it. Wow.
Or that we're the sensitive ones.
Yeah, like we're too sensitive.
Yeah.
People are people.
Oh God, I can't stand that.
Yeah, you're right. People are people. And I said that hurts my people, so stop.
Yeah, exactly. Because it does perpetuate violence later on.
Exactly.
Like down the line. Like even if it's just, quote unquote, just psychological violence, later someone else will learn like, oh, Black and brown people are inferior, so I can just kill them. Like, which is what we see all the time on the news.
All the time. Or I can just hire them, or I can just fire them, or I can just,
Yeah.
So here's something that's a wonderful fact about her. So she at one time in her life, she lent pigs to poor farmers as a sustainable source of income. So this woman, this goddess was not just here. Again, she was for the people. She was for all people and really wanted to see that humanity was well. These are farmers. And I think that, speaking to how polarizing nowadays can be, there's this, we're just now starting to have this conversation again about all people. You have to be for all civil rights. It can't just be your own. It literally cannot just be your own group of, oppressed people. You have to be for all. And she was demonstrating that throughout her entire lifetime. Even the fact of going as far as during that time because even nowadays, people would be horrified to do that, especially with this administration. Mm-hmm. Wednesdays in Mississippi. Yeah. And I know there's someone out there doing something like that, but I'm saying that she was doing this then.
Yeah.
When there wasn't any surprise races, racism, like, oh my God, how did this happen? This is in our America, before that was happening.
Yeah.
So yes. Oh, let me clarify. She at NYU, she got her bachelor's in education and her master's 2 years later in psychology. Okay. Yeah, that's my clarification there. But yeah, so she was also a caseworker out of school with the New York City Welfare Department, and then that's when she became the assistant. I mean, after that, she became the assistant executive director of Harlem YWCA, and then later on, she became, as she was calling more attention to the issues of Black women, there was this thing called the Black women who are the domestic day workers. They called it slave markets because you know how now I know that even in San Jose, you know this in Cali, there'll be a lot of the migrant workers and maybe they're at Home Depot waiting and people just pick them up. Yep. That's what would happen so you just think about how these things change with different groups. That was happening predominantly in Brooklyn and the Bronx, and that was happening with women of color. Black women. So they would just be outside waiting, and these white women, housewives, would drive by and they would pick them up. They pick them up and they pay them 15 cents an hour to hire them to do whatever they needed them to do.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So she spoke out about that. And it started to get public attention in the media. Eventually it stopped. And sooner, and by, I believe it was 1946, she began to oversee the desegregation of facilities for the YWCA, and was a part of their national leadership. So she went from being in Harlem and then began to work her way up. She was really, really passionate about this consistently. And then in 1965, she founded the YWCA Center for Racial Justice, which she led until 1977. Yeah. So it's just like, I think it's amazing because there was this consistency, and she allowed her pain and what happened to her to inform how she was going to make it better for others.
Yeah, that is so inspiring. I almost want to cry, but I'm not going to.
Listen, let it out.
Yeah.
But it's amazing. It's amazing. So her book, her memoir, Open Wide, The Freedom Gates, I have just put it in my Amazon cart.
I'm also going to put it in my Amazon cart because she's so inspiring. I'm inspired just listening to you talk about her because I feel like for me, at least in the past 2 years, the pain I felt from the election has actually made me almost passive. I'm just like, I can't deal with this anymore. I can't do it anymore. And to hear a story like that, and where she's faced way more challenges and struggles than I have in my life. And she's just like, no, I'm going to change it.
Yeah. I'm going to change it. And was working on that until 98.
Yeah.
And I believe that she was still working up until just a few months before her 98th birthday. So she was literally just consistently working, did not give up the fight. And she also obviously she joined, different causes to change in poll taxes she was, against, and obviously spoke outright against lynching and unfair employment. I mean, the list goes on. And like I told you earlier, she was literally a part of the planning committee for the March on Washington. And she was amongst, a lot of times it's just the 6 men that they speak of, but she was always in the room. She was there. She was a part of that committee, worked alongside Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's so cool. I love her. I can't wait to read this book.
Yeah. I'm really excited. I'm excited to learn more about her from her.
Yeah. In her words.
Yeah, in her words, in her experiences. And I didn't have enough time to delve into all of her interviews, but there's a lot online. A lot of interviews of her. And again, it's, people know, but it feels like it's this little circular space where just certain people kind of know about, and they're their audience is to each other.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? So it never really gets out there. So this is why what you're doing is so amazing, because it's boom, people are what is happening? Oh yeah, and she led the National Council of Negro Women for 4 decades. So from 1957 to 1997. You have to think she's doing all these things at the same time, which is why I'm looking through all, I'm she was doing this, but then in 63, but then she was also doing this, and
Yeah, that's amazing. And I feel you also are doing it all the time, which is a good thing. It's a really, really good thing. And I'm like always so inspired by the things you do too. And it's just so cool that like women of color have always been leading the movement.
Always have been leading the movement.
Yeah.
And also just for me, I think that it is one of those things where I'm like, okay, you know what? For the next year, I want to focus on learning history. I think I told you I originally wanted to go to law school. Did I tell you that?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, so that was when I went to Santa Clara.
That, though.
Yeah, when I went to Santa Clara, I was a poli-sci major. I was doing Model United Nations and not undergrad. I always think of elementary school. No, that was not elementary school. What is that? High school. Jeez,
Yeah.
I'm getting older. All of them are just meshing together. That time before I was 20.
Yes, exactly.
So I really was passionate about it, and I just think that. And I used to feel sad, like I don't have enough education about this stuff. Like I want to do more, you know? And I think that this is part of me, like reading these books and delving into this is going to help me inform my work as an artist and understanding that I can meet that halfway. And heck, she kept learning, so I surely can go back to law school one day. Like this is never too late to go to law school.
Yeah, I mean, look at oh my God, Cynthia Nixon.
Yes.
She was an actress for a long time, and then now she's running for governor.
Exactly.
And I don't think, I feel like in our Western society, we tend to like limit ourselves to just one thing. It's very all or nothing. It's just like you're either this or you're not. Yeah. And like another or Ashton Kutcher, how he basically gave up his career to help women who are sex trafficked. And people are like, oh, just stick to being an actor. And it's just like, he can do both. He can do whatever he wants.
He can do whatever he wants. And then he can write a movie or a documentary about it so that all of you who are just used to watching entertainment can sit down and learn something.
Exactly.
And maybe do something about it, you know? I think it's amazing. And it's so important to know. Let me like go through. I have all these notes. I can see what else. Yeah. I do talk fast. Did I go through all 4 pages of notes that fast? I actually might have. Sorry.
No, that's okay.
Well, like, what things does this bring up for you, I guess? Like,
it reminds me of like a lot of the conversations we've had about intersectional feminism and how that's so important. But the conversation now is like all centered around white feminism. And I feel like when white women hear the term white feminism, they just like shut off and they're just like, you're not supporting women. And that's the end of the conversation. Usually it's just like, you want to pit us against each other. And it's just like, no, that's not true. But you also have to think that me as an Asian woman, I have different struggles in my Asian community than you as a Black woman or you as like a Latina, so on and so forth. It's like we all have different struggles. We all have to come together and band together for a more equal playing field.
Exactly. And that's what Dorothy Height was focusing on. She was like, you cannot separate women's rights from civil rights. Yeah. And it is in her civil rights work that she was able, like it said, like my notes, she broadened the reach of the women's rights movement because she sat amongst the civil rights leaders, yet she was a woman. So she was able to merge the two and say, listen, this is what's going on here. This is what's going on here. You cannot separate the two.
Yeah. And you shouldn't.
And you shouldn't. Yeah. You shouldn't be interested in that. And on one hand, it can be like, well, we want to get this done first and then we can deal with that. We want to help our own and then we'll help the others. But it's like, no, honestly, we're all humans.
Yes.
And this is where I do believe, I don't believe in color blindness, but this is where I do believe in like, yeah, we're all humans. We're all humanity. And in order for things to really move along, it's actually going to take people, everybody.
This also reminds me, sorry, I love elephants, but on the same note of intersectional feminism and civil rights, this reminds me of a book I read years ago called, I think it's called Asian American Dreams. I could be wrong, by Helen Zia. And she was, she also helped out a lot in the civil rights movement in the 60s. But she was in the closet at the time. Okay. And the civil rights leader, and she wrote this in her memoir, I guess, these civil rights leaders who are all men, they were all Black men, were just like, look, we can't have a lesbian. If you're a lesbian, like you can't be a part of this movement, basically. Yeah. And she had to lie. And she was just like, well, no, I'm straight. Like those are just rumors and things like that. So it just like, it reminds me of like all these things of like, even if they are civil rights leaders and they're, you know, amazing, and Martin Luther King's amazing, they still had these like misogynistic and homophobic and anti-feminist thoughts as well, because again, it was for them to go forward first, kind of like how Susan B. Anthony just wanted white women to go forward with her first.
She's like, wait, women of color, what do they need? They're fine.
Yeah, exactly.
You know? Yeah, I think it's also like the and this is where I think human evolution is important, and thought. You know, at that time, we now you hear it being thrown around all the time, and I think it's kind of lost. It's not lost its weight. I don't think the weight is always acknowledged of the word or the term patriarchy. But understanding what that actually is, and understanding the pain of the patriarchy, as we say, and what that represents, and the different, and then also understanding how this, though America, United States of America, was built by people of color, understanding that the values that we have held have been by oppressors, white men who were oppressors to these people. So it's like, you don't even understand that you are carrying a legacy of oppression to women, to bodies, sexualizing Asian women, sexualizing Black women. You know, you don't even understand what you're doing. You're carrying all these oppressive thoughts and saying, oh, I'm for the rights, but we're carrying those. And so that comes, I think, with the evolution. And I think that that's and I can't wait to read her memoir. I would love to come back for a part 2 about her.
Yes, please
that would
come
be
back
really cool
for a part 2. I would love for you to come back.
Okay, that would be really cool. And then we could both read, like, have a discussion. I don't know, that'd be like a little homework assignment.
Yeah.
But she said that to have spoken, and I talked to you about it earlier, about how she, and I'm paraphrasing, but how she didn't feel she needed to elbow her way into the front because she understood what was happening with, like, the men being in the forefront, but she was confident about what she was giving in her place, not in her place, but with what she was doing, what her job was. I think that in that way, when I think about spirituality and all the Oprah Super Soul Sunday conversations that I listen to, I think that she was just for her time and ahead of her time. And that she knew, hey, I don't need to fight this, because she already knew that her greater purpose is what it seems when I read, because I'm like, how did you, and I later Barnard apologized, and that was like the greatest honor, and they gave her an honorary degree and everything. And but yeah, I wonder if she just had such a, not that she didn't have bad days, but there was like a piece of, I'm not going to fight this because I know my greater purpose.
Yeah, it's almost as if to tie it back into spirituality, it's like she knew the universe or God or whoever was there. They were just like, you know what, I'm going to take care of you.
Right. It's going to be handled.
Yeah.
And she kept doing the greater good for everyone. And I believe in a lot of ways it was handled. I believe it was handled. She's got, you know, the highest honors, you know, for a civilian. And President Obama spoke at her eulogy. And, you know, it's amazing. Like, it's so amazing to see the span and the fact. And this is another thing. And I didn't see this, but I would love to watch. I'm sure I can find it somewhere. Because she did help with Obama's campaign, too, by the way.
What?
Well, she passed in 2010, so she got to see him become president.
Oh, wow. That must have been amazing for her to see.
Yeah, so I just feel like she must have had a certain amount of peace because she was working for things and change was happening. And she was able to see that in 98 years. You know,
that's something I also need to learn from her, because I feel like I'm always future thinking and I'm always just like, is this worth it? Is this my purpose? And I'm like always in a frenzy of anxiety. And I think I just need to learn to go with things with grace, basically, and with peace. Yeah. That's easier said than done.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think but going back to what we were talking about earlier about childhood. So these things happened to her when she was a child. And she then, it's like, I think there was almost, it seems from what I've learned of her so far, that it seems that there was a necessity to continue. I also read that she was a severely asthmatic child, and that she wasn't expected to live past 16.
Wow.
So I think there's just like these things that instead of like folding into yourself, you expand.
I love that.
It seems that that's what she did. Like, Barnard hurt, but it was like the necessity, like, I must go to school. Mm-hmm. And so NYU, which now, I mean, people, NYU, you know, and it's just like she went.
Yeah. Ugh, that's so inspiring.
It's
I
so
love her.
inspiring. It's so
Yeah.
inspiring. And she just needs to be insured. And I'm sure, again, like, I've seen heroes and fun facts and all of these things, circulate on Instagram, but I think that we have to live into them and understand what it means, to be a social activist, to stand up for everyone, and to also be okay with telling people, hey, women, you're not being inclusive.
Yeah,
You're
exactly.
not intersectional.
Yeah.
And we have these Black women and these brown women and these Asian women here, and we're all trying to because that's another thing, that's a different conversation.
Yeah.
But people of color were uniting.
Yes.
People don't know that. And there wasn't that same huge distance between even like African Americans. Nope. A lot of African Americans who were in civil rights, like even Maya Angelou, they were going at, there was a lot of uniting happening amongst people of color.
Oh man, I
Back
would
in the day, as we
love
say.
to have another episode about that.
Yeah, because I'm just like, there was a lot of stuff happening that, conspiracy theorists to me, that I just feel was dismantled. But
No, I want to hear more
in
about
many
this, because
ways.
in a previous episode, I talked about how I often get really frustrated with the Asian American community because we are so separated and we hate each other amongst our different nationalities, and there's so much anti-Blackness, like so much so, and like we don't show, even if we are quote unquote woke, we don't show any, for the most part, solidarity with Black Lives Matter or like with anything. We just like kind of are in our own space. And it does go back to a lot of like, at least in Chinese culture, it's like, oh, don't disrupt like the peace and like be in line with something. I don't know where I was going, but yeah, I do think in the 60s, I remember seeing pictures of Asian Americans being like yellow peril for Black power and things like that. And I wish that was a thing, but I do believe there is I know there's something happening.
It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
I mean, even if we want to simplify it, for the people who are like really conspiracy theories right now, okay, let's simplify it and say they're not teaching the history. Fine, let's simplify it and say the history is not being taught. So then therefore, we don't know that we have almost, I would say, a spiritual or a person or an experiential obligation to one another.
Yeah.
Because we have no way of tracking the people that came before us, or we don't know that there were people. We think, oh, this is something new, Asian Americans in solidarity with African Americans. And it's like, no, this has happened before.
Yeah. It's
There
definitely
was just an
happened
erasure
before.
of that entire history because it didn't benefit the status quo.
Yes, exactly. And I do think, like, at least in the media, things I've seen, there is like this narrative with like, oh, well, Black people hate Asians anyway. So it's just like, look at all this like violence that happens. And what was I thinking specifically? Oh, there was like something on the tip of my tongue. Oh, the LA riots.
Yes.
That was
very painful
Yeah.
to the communities. That was
Yes.
very, very painful to the communities. And it's so crazy because I feel like I can see it where I'm like, don't you all know that it's not benefiting you?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, like,
Yeah.
do you see who it's benefiting?
Yeah, that's
It
the
has yet to
question
be you.
I always ask my community is like, when we buy into the model minority, we're buying into white supremacy. Like when we're done blaming Muslims, Mexicans, and Black people for everything, it's gonna be us. It's gonna be Asian people. It's gonna be us. Like
First, before the white
Yeah,
people. It's like,
exactly.
okay, but you know that you're still like, it's true though. It's
Yeah.
true, and understanding that. But I think that that's also like, in a lot of ways, that creates and sustains the model minority myth, sustains fear. Because it's like, if we do not uphold this, we will be next.
Yeah.
And since we have the privilege of upholding this, perhaps we should sustain it. And I think that fear keeps people not feeling like they can break that silence, But, and again, this still doesn't benefit. And it's, I mean, you see it, this, status within Black communities exists, or Africans versus African Americans versus people who are Caribbean, like, I'm not Black, and what Blackness, and then Afro-Latino. I mean, oh my God.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to speak for Mexican community at all, but growing up in Southern California, I remember at least some of my friends would tell me that like there would be some Mexican students who'd be like, oh, I'm not Mexican, I'm Spanish. Like to like sort of
that
have that divide too.
That was new to me because my friends and, you know, from being from San Jose, I don't know the last time the word Hispanic was used by me. I'm not sure it ever was. I think that, like, I would grow up thinking somebody was Mexican until they were like, oh no, I'm Puerto Rican or I'm Guatemalan. I don't think Hispanic was a thing. But you know what? I do remember it becoming a word that I heard in undergrad. And at that time, you know, one of my closest friends was like, no, Latino, you know, Latina. Like, there wasn't this, like, Hispanic thing or Spanish. So when I came here, it was a culture shock to me. It was truly a culture shock when I heard people say, oh, I'm Spanish. And I was like, ooh. Or saying Hispanic. I was like, ugh. You know, and I was like, I know I'm African American, but I feel like, oh my God, we say that, you know, and I had to talk to some of my friends from home. They're like, yeah, it's cultural, and understanding those, like, coastal cultures too. But it was definitely a shock to me because I was very much so we've talked about this, but in high school, I was the only I was the only Black person in my group. All my friends were Asian American, you know, so I grew up with, and so sometimes people talk to me, I'll have, you know, Asian American new friends that I meet, they're talking about things and I kind of like assume like, oh, I understand it, only because my friends, we have these conversations and I've seen them evolve and seen all of us kind of evolve in our consciousness about what we're actually experiencing. Because I think it's pretty safe to say we all bought into everything that we were being sold in high school.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Asians are smart, Black people are not, but you're the smart Black person. I think we all bought into all of these narratives. Oh, yeah. It's pretty safe to say. Yeah. If I'm wrong, y'all can comment. But friends from high school, I'm pretty sure we all bought into it.
Yeah, I was definitely called white a lot, especially in college.
Yeah,
they would be like, "Oh, you're not a real Asian. You're like kind of white," and it's just
and how
because
did it make you feel?
I have an opinion. It made me feel angry all the time. And because I would always fight, I'd be like, well, I'm not. I'm Asian. They're like, oh, no. And even other Asians would be like, you look white to me. And I'm like, what does that mean? Because to me, in my opinion, when I look in a mirror, I'm just like, oh, I'm Asian. And like, I've never, like, obviously there would be times growing up, there'd be some trauma of like, you know, crazy old white people coming up to me and being like, go back to China. But I kind of chalked it up to like, okay, that's like a crazy white person who's like 70 and probably has like Vietnam like PTSD. I don't know. But when it was in college and it was like my peers and people I thought were pretty progressive and liberal saying those things, I felt confused and angry a lot of the times. And I'm sure in like elementary school, high school, that time, maybe if someone had told me that, I would have been like, oh, that's nice, because I didn't have a lot of Asian identity or pride. Yeah, exactly. But I think by the time I was in college, I was just like, well, I'm Asian and I like it, but you keep denying me that. Yeah.
I definitely in high school got Oreo. I got, you're Black, but you're like, you're whitewashed and whitewashed. I mean, you're Black, but you're like a white girl, and this would be from everybody. This was not, you know, Black kids said it, but the white people would say it too a lot. And I don't know. I cannot tell you. I think it was the opposite, where I found it offensive later in life. I think in the beginning I thought it was an affirmation that I'm close to some sort of status. I don't think that I understood what was being said. I knew that like I wanted to fit in with the Black girls in high school, but didn't. But I think that's just because I was not different than them, period. I think it was just different than the ones that I wanted to fit in. There were other ones who were different like me, but I wanted to fit in with the ones that I didn't fit in with.
I really wanted to fit in with the Asian community in college, and I didn't because they were kind of like, did you watch Crazy Rich Asians?
I haven't seen it yet.
Oh God, but they were kind of like the Crazy Rich. They were like, you know, they all had like, you know, Prada handbags, and they were all like wearing Gucci and things like that, and they were all like very fashionable. And I was always just like the weirdo writer, social justice. Like liberal arts person, you know, and I like didn't want to go into hedge fund or finance, and I didn't want to be a doctor. I didn't want to be an engineer. So it was like really isolating because I was just like, I really want to be a part. And even to this day, I'm like, I really want to be a part of that community. But just like the things I experience, it's always like, oh, you guys still think that these backwards thoughts about us and like how we fit into white supremacy.
Right.
And it's almost like we believe that we're white.
Mm-hmm. I think that this is interesting because I feel like at the end of the day, these are like capitalistic things still, right? Like this idea of like status. So whether it stays here or goes anywhere in Asia, it's still to me, it's status. And Prada, all these things are pushed by American media. You know what I'm saying? And so I think that and we can say the same for the African American community. So like, in what ways does status change how we're seeing? And again, like we were talking about Dorothy, it's like these things are all distractions. Think about it. And you're talking about you're for social justice, which is what we should be for. It's like almost, to me, it seems as if somewhere in the 90s, it was like, or 80s even, we're going to shove capitalism down these people's throats because they're all becoming too conscious about what's happening. And all of a sudden, everyone is purchasing, and it's Asian status, and everybody's doing it in their own different way. And they market it differently too. Yeah. So maybe for an Asian American, it is like really big sunglasses and a really huge handbag. And then for an African American, it's really big sunglasses with some really nice shoes. But they're marketing, it's the same brands.
Yeah, it is.
They're marketing it differently to these different groups. Yeah. And the groups aren't paying attention to what they need to be paying attention to, which is like, oh, maybe we should learn about our history.
Yeah, and maybe we should pay attention to what's happening with like mass incarceration and police brutality and like how it keeps happening.
It keeps
happening. And like gun violence, it's just like sickening.
Yeah.
And we talked about this too over lunch where I was telling you I'm taking like a social media break, or I needed to this summer. Because it got to a point where I was just like, what am I looking for here? And I was like, and I would, whenever I found myself scrolling for an hour, I would stop. I would like zoom out and be like, what I'm looking for isn't here.
Yeah.
But
oh
like,
my God, I could cry. Yeah. I feel like it's so profound. It's so profound. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no. But yeah, and I feel like I keep looking for something in my phone and I'm like, it's not there, but something is like, it's like a neurological thing where it's just like, okay, open Instagram and post your food or something.
It's not there. Yeah. Oh my God. I actually found myself in one of those moods today. I was getting ready to come here, and I had like about an hour and a half to do so. I love giving myself time. And I just like picked up my phone. I was just scrolling on Instagram, and I was like, and I just felt like it was like an outer body experience. And it was so uncomfortable. It was like a knot in like every chakra. It was just so uncomfortable. I was like, what am I looking for? What am I doing?
Yeah.
What am I doing? I was literally like, I was fresh out of the shower. I was lotioning. I was like, and I just started scrolling in my towel. And I was like, what am I doing?
Yeah. There would be times, this is how bad my addiction got. There would be times where I'd be listening to a podcast or like something on my phone. And I just take my phone into the bathroom as I'm showering, like on the ledge, just to keep listening, just to keep distract me from whatever I'm not confronting or whatever I'm trying to distract myself from. Because I think at the other end of it, it's probably too painful. And like what you were saying with like all these consumerism and like materialism being pushed on us, it's like, I think if we really found out the truth, it would be too painful.
It'd be too painful.
Yeah.
I think so. And if we cultivated the space to acknowledge it.
Yeah.
Too, I think that it would be really painful. And this is something, and then I think about the greatness of all of our ancestors and people before us, and they didn't have those same distractions.
They didn't, yeah.
And also things were so ugly, like not that things were just so blatant, which I think they've always been. We've been distracted. Mm-hmm. Things were blatant, and they did not have distractions. Yes. Yeah. So it was like, what are you gonna do? You can't scroll through Instagram. You ain't got Facebook, Twitter. You know what I'm saying? You can't tweet at the president yelling at him and then reposting the thread on your Instagram stories to show people you yelled at him. Like you can't spiral your way into this social media activism. You're going to have to get out there
and fight.
And like do nothing
get
at
arrested.
All. Or just literally choose the paths of, of zero, like fight at all. So I think it's interesting. And I think that, I've heard a lot of people taking social media breaks. And I think that those are people who, in my opinion, are even having that desire. You're tapped into something like, I feel like you're vibrating high. I really, really do. Cause I think that to know that that it's spiraling you, whether it be comparing or just like complete absence of presence at all. It's spiraling you into this other like, you know, world.
It is, because I'll look through so many stories and I'm like, this is so boring.
Even I remember stories being stupid, and now stories is like, people have told me like, oh yeah, I get my entertainment from stories. I'm like, you watch stories like that?
Yeah.
Well, and there's something about it again, like the quickness of it. You just like 15 seconds.
Yeah.
Every 15 seconds, a new flash. Yeah. So I do find it interesting. I also have noticed that my stories, that when I'm talking about something like that I feel like is, I don't know, like, oh my God, I had an epiphany, I feel like less people watch it. They're kind of like,
and I don't know what to do about it because I take these breaks and then like today I'll find myself scrolling and be like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
Again, it's like this cycle and I don't know how to like break it because I know I'm being distracted. I know I'm like avoiding, I'm like avoiding activism and because I think it is too painful right now, because I just like, whenever I see the news, like even with the police officer that went into an apartment and that is just like, yeah, exactly. It, like, I don't know how to compartmentalize that. It just like hurts me to a level of like, it feels like it happened to me. Yeah. And I think that's a whole other thing that I need to work on of
that's a deep PTSD is what it is. And it's something that happens to people of color. I mean, people go into like epigenetics, but it's a deep PTSD where you're literally traumatized and then you feel it. You feel a guttural reaction. I remember Charlottesville last year. It happened the weekend before I started my new job, in which I was the only Black person at that company of 30 people who were all millennials under the age of 37. Context. Yeah. Only Black person. And I remember I knew, I started work on a Monday. And so it was just kind of breaking into the news, like the details. And somebody had sent me a video. I think it was a Vice video when they went to talk to these neo-Nazis and stuff about their beliefs. And I was watching it and I started getting like hot. My body was getting heated and I was new at work, but I was like, excuse me, may I step? And I had to step out. Cause they were playing rap music and people were just like, they were typing and they're this and they're in their own world. And I was like, oh my God. It was definitely very, very, it felt like I was experiencing this kind of like thing firsthand. That happened to me in reading, Uncle Tom's Cabin? Yeah. When I read it in grad school, I started to cry. I was getting hot with anger. I've never had an experience reading anything like that. Yeah. Where I was just like, I was shaking. I had to text one of my friends who's also African-American and she was in my class. And I was like, I can't. She said, me too. I'm having trouble. And I was like, I feel like something's happening to me. And that's when I actually learned about epigenetics, because my professor is Jewish and he was like, have you heard of epigenetics? And we were like, no, because we were both talking about our experience. And I looked it up and I was like, oh my God. He was like, they say that there might be an imprint and you could be experiencing this.
It's like it's like intergenerational trauma, basically.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Because I was like, it was, Uncle Tom's Cabin visually is written very beautifully. It's very poetic. Mm-hmm. And so you get these images and they were just very, very real. Yeah. Very, very real, vivid images. And it was just disturbing to me. Yes. It was just very, very disturbing. And I just remember reading, I was living by myself at the time in a studio, and I remember just like shaking and it just like felt sick. I felt so sick. I was like, this is horrible. So I think it's interesting, and having these conversations and exploring history like this is going to be very, I don't know, very helpful for us in the future.
Yeah, I do feel like every time I record a session, it is very therapeutic, and I feel like excited with the guests because I'm just like, wow, I didn't know this, and I'm so excited you know this now too. And it's like this moment of like one way to battle white supremacy, basically. I mean, and it is, because I think that, and people say, oh, white supremacy, oh, white people are bad. Okay, well, I feel like this is my breakdown of it. Mm-hmm. It's like this: the word supreme, the word white, like best, the best, and white. And thinking that learning about white women, you know what I'm saying, being these pioneers, but not learning about women of color, is saying that what they've done is supreme, and what we've done is
okay.
Yeah, like we didn't do anything.
Like we didn't do anything.
Yeah.
Or like what we did wasn't what informed what they did. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? And it's not because we're better. It's because we're having these thorough women and people of color experiences that make us, we just cover a little more ground because of these experiences. And then all together, we can cover a lot. We can cover all the ground. Yes. That's the point of being intersectional. Broken down.
That's a beautiful way to break it down.
Broken down, simplified.
Yeah.
You know.
Oh my gosh.
But yeah, I would love to do a part 2.
Yes, please. Let's do a part 2.
I would love to do a part 2.
Because you're going to dinner, right, tonight?
Oh yeah, I'm going to dinner. But I mean, I still have 30 minutes, so I need to leave. But I would just, I feel like I've gone through everything very fast. But I would love to do a part 2.
Yes, let's do a part 2. Okay. I so enjoed this conversation because like and so many times like I would laugh and I get chills and I'd almost cry. So it was like a roller coaster. But it was so good because it's so nice to finally sit with a woman and a woman of color.
Oh yeah.
Yes. Because sometimes it's hard to talk about these experiences with a white man or a white woman because like even if they're as well intentioned as they may be, they just don't feel it in their like guts like we do. Like like how you described how you felt when you found out about Charlottesville. Like I think to most people it is devastating. Yeah. But it's like not that body reaction.
I mean, the visuals of Charlottesville, like seeing them march, I was like, these idiots, you know, like you can like reduce it a little bit, but hearing the hate and when they're marching, like hearing the venom and the violence. Yeah. That was just like, oh my, like it literally, I just got chills right now. Like the absolute violence, because intention is everything, and the intention of hate and tear down and the fear of losing something that isn't even yours. It doesn't all belong to you. Yeah. It's not real. That too is a myth. Yeah. It's not yours.
Yeah, and it's like it's all based on fear. It's all based on fear of losing who they are, but it's just like, but you've been doing that to people of color, right? So what exactly are you fearing we're gonna do the same to you guys?
Mayor, he was just the mayor of New Orleans. He met with Oprah on Super Soul Sundays recently. It would be at the top of her playlist. Yeah. He has it's a 2 or 3 parts, and he talks about, he's a white man, and he talks about how when white people say they're afraid that when they're the minority, which I started to hate minority anyways. I think I'm starting to hate it. But anyways, when they're the minority, that they are fearful that we're gonna get them, you know. And he said, I have interacted with a lot of people of color. I think he speaks specifically to Black people in this. And he says, from my experiences, he's like, I can tell you, they can't do nearly what we've done to them. Yeah. They can't. They couldn't. And I think that that's really important to note. And that fear that people have of being, it's really karmic. And I've had somebody express to me blatantly, like, you know, white people, we're afraid you guys are going to, when you guys get it back, you're going to get us bad. And I'm just like, that means you know how bad
that means you know how.
Which I don't know what's more disturbing, the idea that we would be that violent, or the idea that you know how violent it is.
Oh, I know. And I hate to give Louis C.K. airtime, but he did make that joke once of, I don't even remember what it was, but it was basically that of like, if he could choose to like re-up, he'd be like, oh yes, white every single time. Because he himself knows how badly people of color are treated. So that's like where, you know, that level, that's gonna, the leveling of it, and the, I think, evolution of that is making people even more fearful. New generations, I will say, fearful in ways that the old generations already have demonstrated. And the idea of being afraid of, really, I almost think it's fear of seeing those images and being like, I'm afraid they're going to do that to me, because there is a human inside of you that knows that that's just not right. Yeah. And there's that fear. But it's that fear of the other, and like, what are they going to do? And it's like, no, we're not harming you. We just really just want everybody to play equal. Yeah. And we understand that this is going to mean workplaces look a lot different. Yes. And that politics looks a lot different, and that history books
look real.
Yes.
And that
media
movies
looks
are real.
real.
Media
Yeah.
exactly looks real. We understand this. Like, you can't create a film in which all of the extras too are white. Like, is that really happening unless it's a white town somewhere? But like, otherwise, why is everyone white in your film
Yeah.
or in your TV show? Like, that's not real.
It's
so
not.
it's like that kind of stuff. I understand that that's because it's uncomfortable to people, but growth is not comfortable.
Growth is not comfortable. It's not. I wanted to touch on, like, with all of this, I wanted to get your opinion of, like, what you think of, like, now being woke and politically, like, you know, a social justice activist is, like, cool. It's trending. And, like, what do you think about, like,
God.
I think it's a performance.
It's
and it makes
performative.
me really angry.
It is performative. And
Yeah.
so I was introduced to the word woke when I started at my previous place of work, again, as the only only Black woman and one of the few people of color. And it became performative very quickly because the N-word would be blasting over the radio at work, and we had Sonos, so people chose to what they wanted to listen to. And I thought to myself, why are these people having conversations about Get Out, about Hidden Figures? Literally, this is real stuff I'm talking about. And yet I hear da-da-da-da-da, and it's like unedited rap, and I'm the only Black body in this space, and they're talking about being woke.
Yeah.
I thought it was extremely performative. I caught on quickly in the beginning. I thought this is the thing, very trusting towards people in general, and we're just like, oh yay, like this is so nice. Even though I'm the only Black person here, it's nice to be in a space where all of these white people who are liberals, we're uniting, we care about the same things. And then it started feeling very performative.
Yeah.
You know, woke, and people saying like, oh, that's cray, and even slang. I mean, I could go on and on. Performative.
Yeah.
Because being woke, first of all, you don't need to repeat it over and over again when you're woke. So, you know, first of all, you don't need to remind people that you're woke. You just are. You know the power of being. Just be. Like Common says, be. You know, you're woke. So you don't have to say it all the time. You don't have to bring up how you're woke.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah.
That's a performance. Like, look at me, I'm woke. Does it make you feel comfortable? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, you don't have to bring that up. Now, you know, well, I can't ask questions. I can't have conversation. People might say that. I'm not going to even go there. I'm just going to say that you don't have to use the word, throw it out there. Just like being like, I love Black. You're my Black friend. It makes me feel the same. It feels like it just feels like another way to token your liberalism.
Oh my God! Yeah.
To scale it and say that, you know, my dad voted for Trump, but I'm woke, and now you're scaling how you're better than him, and I question how that is to help us.
Yeah. Yeah. I recently started feeling this actually after the election because of the Women's March, and like obviously wonderful that it happened, but you know, I've been to the other marches. I've been to ones specifically about like police brutality, and it's just like there wasn't a turnout like that. There wasn't, and like there weren't these cute pink hats or whatever.
That definitely got me. I was uncomfortable. I was uncomfortable because I didn't want to be a critic, but I was wondering to myself, again, out of a place of trauma and pain, truly, are they going to be there when we need them? And then I didn't see people there.
No.
And a lot of the people that I saw posting on Instagram and Twitter that I know, well, Facebook mainly, because I was using Facebook at the time. Posting their pussy, the pink pussy hat, that's what it's called, right?
Yeah.
Posting that and smiling and being like, yes, women and blah, 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 women's rights. They could care less about what was happening to Black women before or after that
or
march.
Trans women.
Or oh my God.
Yeah, like
could care less about what's happening to
Exactly.
trans women. Could care even more less what's happening to poor trans women.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why the pussy hats made me so angry, because
Yeah.
just like, well, not every woman has a pussy or a uterus.
Yeah.
And
Not
it's like,
every
why
woman
is
with
that?
one can conceive.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
might want to.
Ugh. And it,
You know,
yeah, that made me so
you know,
angry.
like it's you know, and for something that is supposed to be inclusive, like I could see if it was a film about women at the Women's March and it was about only a group of women who were born women and identified as women. Okay, cool. You know what I'm saying? They're very gender normative in that sense. Whatever, cool. But that's not what something that was supposed to be at really the way that it was completely like, you know, completely marketed, if you will. It was a global scale. And that's why the women of color at the Women's March kind of had their own little nugget, if you remember.
Yeah.
And I watched that, and I was moved by their own little nugget in which they talked about this, about like what this means. And I remember, didn't one of them, weren't they getting booed? Black women of color were being booed. Women of color were being booed at the Women's March. They were they're having horrible things said to them about them, talking about, you know, if they had posters that were about being inclusive. They had horrible things being said to them by women who define themselves as, you know, being for women.
Yeah. And that's why.
And people recounted these experiences that they had.
Yeah.
Again, Dorothy Height. You cannot have these marches and these conversations and it be only about what people who look like you. And I understand it means frustration. It means a huge learning curve. It means a lot of things to say, oh, I need to learn more about Sandra Bland. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Oh my God, I should care about what happened to her. It's uncomfortable, but guess what? It's uncomfortable to have no choice but to feel like you have no choice but to care. Yeah. Based off of your personal experience alone.
Yeah. Like even when it was all happening and I saw it on Instagram, like everyone posing with their posters, that was when I was just like, this isn't real. This isn't a real movement that I can get behind. And I think that's part of why I became really, like, I almost like, it was something you used. It was so eloquent where I like fell into myself, where I went inward. Because I was just like, I feel like I don't belong in this, but like I want to, like I want so badly to believe in this, but like something in my gut is telling me that it's just like it's not real and not authentic.
You know, from what I know, the women at the core, and specifically the women of color at the core of that movement, they care. But I remember there being issues before the march, like leading up to the march, about them feeling like they weren't being included in being speakers, and there was stuff that was happening, drama or like, you know, discrepancies from within. But I know that the women of color behind that care. And I think that, it would be interesting to learn more about Dorothy and lead that into like, let me do some research into what causes are happening. Cause I'm ready to start again. But I was very wounded by, women who I knew, from schools that have said horrible things or just dismissive things about people of color, women of color, that I saw standing up for that. And I, you know, and human as it is, I let it kind of mar my disposition about it. I was like,
yeah.
I was like, they're associated with it.
Yeah. No, I totally get it.
But I definitely think, the beanies, it's cool, it's great, but activism is not a beanie and it's not a poster. And I think that, like, even as a Black woman, I ask myself, how can I do better? Yeah. What can I do?
Same.
You know? And to not feel comfortable in what I'm doing and what I'm not doing, not to feel settled. Yeah. You know, like, oh, I'm doing this. I gave money. I donated on Indiegogo or whatever.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
You know, like, finding my ways to really think about this and challenge myself and learn, educate myself is really important. So that's my task for 2019.
Yes, I love it.
Well, starting now, the school year calendar.
Yes, school year.
One of my colleagues is like, oh, the school calendar. So the school calendar.
Yeah, school year is coming up for all of us. But I also want to get back to it because I feel like I have been watching on the sidelines for too long. And I know, and I think that maybe that is what I'm hiding from when I'm like scrolling through Instagram for an hour straight. So, yeah. And I feel like this is part of it where we talk about other women and we bring it back to life. Yeah, bring it back to life and also illuminate what they've done. You know what I'm saying? Illuminate what they've done, their presence. Like, what she's done is here right now. It's like, we are part of her legacy. Like, having this conversation, being able to, the places that we can go into, the things that we can say, even men being fine-tuned to listening to our conversations. Because I think there was also, like, a lack of evolution of, like, understanding that a woman, being taught this is a woman's place, being taught this woman's place, and then now understanding, oh my God, that's wrong. That's something that you have to unlearn. Or that a parent needs to unlearn and then teach you. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Yeah, I definitely had to learn so much throughout the years. We also talked about this over lunch where I was saying that, you know, even when I was 18, 19, or whenever I went to college, I wrote a piece about like Asian Americans, and I was like, we should be colorblind. And now as 28 years old adult looking at that, I'm like, oh my God. And I think about that where I'm just like, yeah, like I definitely had to learn a lot and be like, no, it isn't all colorblind. We have to acknowledge all of our differences and be proud of them.
Exactly.
You know?
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Our differences are beautiful. Our differences make our similarities stronger.
Yeah,
too.
exactly.
It's like, oh my God, we're very different in this, but your family does that too. My parents do that too. Remember you and I were talking about how in accomplishments, how I was, somehow we tied it in. I was like, oh yeah, I'm very quiet about it. And you're like, I always thought of that was just being as a child of an immigrant. And I was like, well, I think, Black families, like my mom, even with the award, she was like, stay humble. Like that's like, I was like, no, that's the same with my family too. Be humble. Yeah. I think that's why Kendrick said, be humble, sit down. I don't know. But like literally like be humble is a thing. So that like makes the similarities even stronger. And now when people are like, oh, Asian Americans, they don't like to brag, or African Americans, they're too loud and brag too much. We're like, actually, that's not true.
Exactly. We're so similar in that way because it's so true. It is an immigrant thing where you're just like, okay, be humble, be like, always remember humility. But I think at least I do it to a fault. I'm just like, I don't know how to take compliments. I'm always just like,
well, part of that, from my experience and conversations I had, is a woman thing too.
It is a woman thing. Yeah. It definitely is. And apologizing too much, which I definitely do. And being a perfectionist, which I'm trying to recover from. What else do I do? I don't know, just diminish myself.
I move on the sidewalk, and I've had women and I've had women of color and white women address that with me. It's a status thing. I will move over. My automatic response is to move over for a white person.
Yes.
If they're walking towards me, but like I've actually had the lane, and then somehow say they zigzag, right? And now they're in my lane, so to speak, right? Because we're all our own cars in New York. I will be like, sorry.
I do that too.
And I'll move over, or I'll just move, or I'll just like, total status.
That's
I had a white woman say, why did you say sorry? Oh, because first of all, you weren't in their way, they were in yours. And why did you apologize? Not only did you move, you said sorry as if they could do something to you. Well, yeah, because there was a day, well, there still is, but there was a time and day where they very much so could do and say something to me. Thus just solidifying I don't belong here. How did I inherit that?
Yeah. Oh my God.
I have no idea.
You just blew my mind because I'm like,
apologize.
I do that.
Like, I'm so sorry. Thank you for letting me, as a Black woman, be here on this sidewalk in New York City. Wow. Thank you. Sorry. I will move out of your way. Like, what is that inner monologue?
I do that too. When I like enter a room, I also say sorry. Like, even though no one cares, I'm always just like, oh, sorry. And I'm, why am I saying sorry before anything has happened?
Nothing happens. It's apologizing for your space.
Oh my God.
Your space is your power. It's our vibranium.
I just made Garrett watch Black Panther.
I actually want to watch it again. Yeah, I do.
It's on Netflix.
I know it's so on Netflix. I know. Yeah. But I've been behind on movies in general, so.
Yeah, I need to watch Searching with John Cho. It's the one.
Yes.
Yeah, it looks so good. God.
I haven't been in the movies in a while. I need to catch up in general.
Yeah.
I was supposed to see Crazy Rich Asians last weekend, and then the movie was late, and I was like, dang, I need to go to work. It was Labor Day, I think it was.
Yeah.
Was it 2 weeks ago now?
Oh.
Gosh darn it. I think it's 2 weeks, but that day.
Yeah, I don't know.
That day.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm like, I need to. And it's important to me for box office numbers. I don't care if it's the last dates in the box office. You got to go.
Exactly.
So put it in my calendar.
You have to vote with your dollars.
Life. Yeah, exactly. You have to go with your dollars. That matters.
Yeah, that's why I don't really go to the movies unless I'm like specific. I'm very specific about it. I'm like, okay, I'll watch Get Out. I'll watch Black Panther.
Yeah,
because
it's expensive, first of all. But you want to make sure that you're supporting something that is going to prove to those people that think like, no, nobody's going to watch this. That like, yeah, we like it.
Yeah, we really do.
Yeah, there's an audience for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Tasking myself this weekend.
Yeah, I hope you watch it. Tell me what you think.
Yeah, I will.
Love
I
Crazy
will.
Rich Asians so
I will.
much.
I'll text you.
When I watched it, I was just like, I should have married a rich Asian. I was just like, in my head, I was like, this is the life I could have had if I got in with those Asian girls in college.
It's the college you're like, oh man, maybe I should have just agreed with them.
I'm just like, oh, this is the life they were living.
Maybe I did speak to. Oh no, no, it's okay. It's okay.
Yeah, I was just like, they have their own private island. How do I get that?
That was the Black Panther. Like,
oh yeah.
Oh man, I want to go. I actually only saw it once too. I wanted to see it twice. But again, like I feel like my schedule is crazy in general, and so I just need to like take out time. I have to force myself. Like, you're going to go to the movie with intention, and not think of it as going to the movies. Because if I think of it that way, I'm like, oh, but I need to do this, that, and the other. I need to think of it like my activism in this regard is going to be to support this story.
Yeah.
You know.
Have you ever been to a country in Africa?
I've not.
Really?
No,
That's
no,
like,
no.
I've never been to China. I mean, I've been to Taiwan, but I've never been to mainland China.
Yeah. No, I've not. And you know, shoot, it wasn't until, I don't even know when, but I'm going to say within the last 8 years or so that I began, not that it doesn't exist, but I began to even hear, anybody from the African diaspora, okay, talk about wanting to go to Africa again. There was a time where that was like the Back to Africa movement, you know, 70s, and there was a time for that. And then I think recently, you know, with this rise of social media meeting police brutality, because it's been there, I think that there's been this like, we're not safe here kind of, you know, and even stealing away to different Caribbean places, people in the Caribbean or in South America, like different places where there are people of African descent or just people of color in general, that it is safer, not just to the body, but to the mind, to the spirit. I would love to go. I don't know where I would start, but I would definitely love to. It's definitely a plan for me. Yeah, it definitely is. I want to travel through Europe, but I also am wary of feeding into this idea that that's where you go for a vacation or travel. Although I've seen a lot of pictures of Greece and that looks beautiful, but I don't want to disregard Africa. And again, there's a lot of different ways that this stuff has been wound inside of us. Yeah. Like, oh, you don't go to Africa. You know, and Issa Rae was just in South Africa. Oh, yeah? Why was she in New York? She was in New York for something. This is like within the last 2 weeks.
Didn't Insecure just premiere like a season? Am I wrong?
What do you mean?
Insecure, didn't it premiere like a new season premiere?
Yeah. It's on the 5th episode now. This coming Sunday was the 4th episode, so the next week will be the 5th.
So it wasn't for a premiere then.
No. Well, I don't think so, because there was something that she was here for, and it was for Insecure, and then she went to South Africa, and she was there with her friends, which I don't know if that was for Insecure. Maybe there was like double whammy. And she made a vacation out of it, but it was just beautiful. I mean, the beaches. I mean, beautiful. And again, that beauty is not. And I'm just like, no. I want to know why you all are showing it to be something else. I want to see it for myself, because I bet good and well it's gorgeous, as I've been told. I had a friend that went to Tanzania. Oh my god! In love, beautiful. I saw the pictures, like, oh my god.
I have a friend. I met him when I was in Denmark. Actually, he's from Uganda. Okay, and he's from the forest where all the gorillas live. He's from there. He lives in that village, and he's always just like, "Yeah, you should come." And I'm like, I don't even know I don't know where to begin. You know? Because of the narrative that you're told of just like, oh, don't go there. But basically,
I feel like anybody that I've seen go to Africa is always super happy. Like, they're happy there. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Like, there is a joy that I see people have when they go there. Yeah. A
lot of my Asian friends, to that note, like, they want to. Even if they're not from any of the country, they're like, yeah, I want to move back to the motherland. Basically, like, a lot of my friends are like, I want to go back to Taiwan. I want to go back to China. Yeah. Like, not back, but like they're from here. Right. But they're just like, I just don't want to be here anymore.
Yeah. There's I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen next. I have no idea what's going to happen to this land next. But I often think like the ancestors, I mean, the natives. I often think about what has happened here to make this here.
I think about that
And
too.
it's
I think about like,
not.
I'm sure, and not to get crazy, but I'm gonna get there. I'm sure there's like some spirit, like
Oh my God.
karmic energy that's just like, you fucked us over. We're going to raise hell.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I have a play called Sins Have Come. Sins Have Come. And it's about it, without giving it away, it's about things that happen in the United States, and it's literally like the blood is in the soil.
Yes.
It's like this has risen.
Yeah.
You know. And I think that, you know, I think some of the stuff that happens, I've thought about it even in my boyfriend's from Connecticut, so I've even thought there. I'm like, I've always thought of that place as haunted, but I think about what happened for I don't know. I'm just saying, y'all, not to scare you people in Connecticut listening, but I'm just saying.
Yeah. I feel that way in upstate New York because that's the easiest place to go outside of the city. Garrett and I just went to a wedding and we stayed in a yurt, which is like glamping, and I hated it. I hate camping. For those listening, I like fucking hate it. I don't get it.
It's not very Californian of you.
Yeah, it's like I've tried so hard to like the woods. I fucking hate it. So we went to a yurt, and it was like in this forest, and it was dark. You had to hold lanterns to find your yurt.
So that's too campy for me.
Yeah.
I like glam.
Me too. I love glam things.
Okay.
And since getting there, I just felt like I couldn't breathe, and my vision felt fuzzy, and I was just like, maybe it's like elevation or something, but I like felt something.
It's energy.
And when Garrett was going to walk, he had to like walk like some, like maybe like 2 minutes to get water somewhere outside of our yurt. As he was walking back, he said he felt a presence like come to his, like, you know how when you feel someone at your face, he felt that. So then, that was scary, and he told me, and I was like, ah. We went to get dinner with the host, because the host had a main house. It was an Airbnb. Okay. And Garrett revealed, he was like, oh, I felt a presence. And the hosts were like, oh, yes, those are the Native Americans that used to live on this land. And I was like, what the fuck? I'm so scared.
The hosts were just at peace with it?
Yeah, they were just like, yeah. They're like these two like white hippies. They're just like, they made essential oils for a living. And they're like, yeah, they're the native tribe that used to live here on this land. It's okay. They're just checking you out because maybe they sense that you can sense them. And I was just like, what? I'm so scared.
I'm sure you're okay. I don't know about you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I often say that when I see scary ghost movies, I was like, well, I'm black, so the ancestors should know that I didn't do it. So like, I'm good, right?
Yeah,
I was like, is that why black people
so.
aren't even in scary movies? Because like we wouldn't be in that situation.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't know. Except like one like Get Out, which that would happen.
Oh my God, Get Out, yeah.
So yeah, no, that's weird. I mean, you could think about it scientifically and say energy. You could think about it spiritually. You could say spiritually. Or if you don't believe in science or spirituality, then I don't know. You can believe in what you want to. But I feel like in those two forms of thought, energy,
there's
something. Things happened there for that to exist. Yeah. So it's real. And I think that, that's probably why some people are just feeling like they want to go elsewhere. They want to go a place where it was made for them. Yeah,
you're right. I think I need to take a trip to China. I've been avoiding that too for some odd reason. I'm just like, oh, China.
Yeah. And I mean, maybe I know that from people who have told me who go anywhere where their parents are from, or even African Americans go to Africa, then you really do feel American. There's an otherness, and there's just kind of like, but I don't belong there either. Yeah. And that can be rough. And I imagine that would be hard for me. But what I hear my brother and anybody else that I've known that's gone to Cuba, a lot of people love Cuba. A lot of African Americans love Cuba. Yeah. I think because of feeling the most connected they can to Africa within proximity to being home here in America. And in other places in the Caribbean, I think make people feel similarly too. Yeah. But the more untouched it is, I think, by the Western world, I feel like the more authentic maybe it might be. And I speak with no experience on that. Yeah. I've gone to London, and that's very touched. So I just say touched. The more untouched, I suppose. You know.
Oh man. I so enjoyed this conversation.
Yes, me too.
Is there anything you want to tell the audience, like anything they should like take away from this, or like
I
just
think
like something positive, I guess, or negative? It could be anything.
Well, I think that like the biggest thing that some takeaways. One, I think that to understand for any of the listeners who are white or identify as white, that when you feel like a person of color is attacking you or you feel confused, whatever, you can do what I did as a person of color and research on Google.
Yes,
I know
Google.
that I've had a lot of conversations with friends of color who feel very stressed at having to be the person who's like the carrier of all things people of color and trying to carry that information. But I think it's important to understand that we too, especially as Americans, are trying to learn as well. We have also been taught watered down or just completely false history. So we are also trying to learn that. So sometimes it's very taxing when you ask us to teach you when we are trying to either learn or fight with what we know.
Yeah.
So like give us space and then you learn and come to your friends of color and then maybe you can have a discussion and ask questions. But I think just blatantly being like, explain it to me is just like cheating on a test in school. You know what I'm saying? So like do your homework. Like I did my homework and like we're going to go back and do more homework, and be like, oh, you know how I talked about this? Well, this is, I'm going to build on these notes and finesse and really come with more stories.
Yeah.
Because that was one of the things that took me a while in my notes, by the way, is that I wanted to avoid as much as possible think pieces about her. And wanted to really refine like real source.
Yes.
And there's a lot out there, there's a lot more than I thought there would be.
Yeah.
So I'd say that's one takeaway. And then also, to really begin to just read for all people who are listening to read search, unspoken women of color heroes or heroes you didn't know. That always happens. Africa, Black History Month, Asian American Month, like every month they have the blogs post about the people you didn't know.
Yeah, they do. They really
identify
do.
with that month. Or that week, whatever it is. So I think looking that up and being open to learning more and being open to, even if you're a person of color, being open to being uncomfortable with unlearning the falsities that you might have been taught about your own people, and being able to realize like, man, they were really mean to Susan B. Anthony in the beginning, and it's like, but come on, sis, Susan B. Anthony, we're not saying that like we know she's not here to defend herself, but like we need to just look at the facts and praise those who were working on our behalf and acknowledge that she did have her place in history. Absolutely. But we need to acknowledge what people have done to uplift all. Yeah. And I think that that's very important. That doesn't mean she doesn't get a history test. We just need to do the history test for Dr. Dorothy Height, what I'm saying?
Exactly.
And make sure that we understand the truth of what happened and the truth of what Dr. Height and those like her, women like her, were doing. It's important.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Is there anything you want to plug?
I guess you guys can like follow me on Instagram at Ms. Wright on Time. So that's MS Wright as my last name. So WRIGHT. And then On Time. It's a very cool handle, and I made that back in the day before handle making was a thing. Glad I claimed it.
It's a good one.
Yeah, it's a good one. Yeah. And that's me on Twitter too. And then on my Instagram, you'll see all of the shows that I'm recently working on right now. Love My Roomie, Spot a True Period Piece, and B-Sides. All different, all really women-centric stories.
Yes.
That are addressing different things about womanhood, which I really love. I've always loved sisterhood. Naturally, this is how I've been. So talking about women's stories is interesting to me. And let's just keep it going. Thank you so much for having me, Sandy.
Thank you.
I'll be back. We'll schedule another date whenever works for you.
Yeah,
and I'll come back with more homework.
Yes.
There's going to be a part 2.
Yes, and you guys should definitely tune in. And I'm a huge fan of her work, so check it all out.
Thank you.
And you can follow Now in Color on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, and SoundCloud. And we're also on Instagram at Now in Color Podcast, and on Twitter it's now _in color.